The dispatcher who took the call that Friday morning wasn't listening to a neighbor or a passing driver or a grown adult who'd found something terrible. The voice reporting a shooting inside that house on South LaChance Road belonged to a 13-year-old girl. And she wasn't calling about someone else. She was calling because she had just been shot 4 times, and she was still conscious enough to pick up a phone and tell police what was happening around her. Everyone who's followed this case knows the number by now. 6 dead, including the man responsible. What far fewer people have stopped on is the single fact that the entire first scene turns on. The youngest person in that house is the reason anyone on the outside found out about it when they did. Not a smoke alarm. Not a 911 call from a witness down the road. A wounded child. And what she did in those minutes is either the most overlooked act in this whole story, or the only thing about it that makes any sense at all. Let me take you back to the morning, and I'll show you what I mean. It was Friday, August 14th, 2026, in Missaukee County, rural northern Michigan, the kind of place where homes sit far apart and the nearest trooper can be miles away. According to Michigan State Police, troopers were dispatched just before noon, around 11:40 in the morning, to a home on South LaChance Road in Lake Township. The reason they were dispatched matters. Was a call that reached them was a report that a 13-year-old girl had been shot. That was the alarm. That was what pulled law enforcement toward the first of what would become 3 crime scenes. When troopers arrived, they found 3 people dead inside that home. Police initially identified them only by age and gender: a 45-year-old man, a 40-year-old woman, and a 16-year-old boy. And then there was the girl. She was alive. She had been shot 4 times, and despite that, she had survived long enough to reach help. She was rushed to a hospital in critical condition. By the next day, police said she was stable. Now sit with the sequence there, because it's easy to skip past. In a house where 3 people had just been killed, with the person responsible gone before police arrived, the account that reached investigators first came from her. Michigan State Police said she had called 911 to report that she had been shot. Think about what that requires. Not just surviving the wounds, staying conscious, finding a phone, dialing, speaking clearly enough to be understood, giving a location, doing all of it while injured, and while everyone else in the home was already gone. Investigators and her own family would go on to call her a hero, and for once that word isn't inflation. In the coldest practical terms, her call is what set the response in motion. So who is she? Here I want to be careful, and I want to tell you exactly why. For the first 2 days, police released only ages and genders, no names and no explanation of how any of these people were connected. But a family member spoke publicly before police confirmed identities. A man who identified himself on Facebook as David Everett wrote that his daughter, Amanda Everett, 40 years old, and her 2 children had been shot in their home. He wrote that the family had, in his words, just lost 2 beautiful people, and one is clinging to life. Read the family's own words against what police described, and the shape of it becomes painfully clear. A mother, 2 children, 2 of the people in that home killed, and the one clinging to life, surviving. That lines up with the picture police gave: a 40-year-old woman, a 16-year-old, and the 13-year-old girl who lived. I'm not going to put the surviving child's name in this video, and I'd ask you not to go looking for it either. She is a minor, she is a victim, and she is, by every account, still recovering from being shot 4 times. What she deserves from anyone telling this story is care, not exposure. So I'll tell you what she did. I won't tell you who she is. But notice something, because it becomes important. There was a 4th person in that first house, the 45-year-old man, and to this day, police have not publicly explained who he was, or how he connected to the family. Even with a survivor, even with a witness who lived through it, that piece hasn't been resolved in public. Hold on to that. It tells you something about how much is still missing from a case that, on the surface, looks like it's already been explained. And it's worth pausing on what a surviving witness actually means for an investigation like this one. In a case with 3 people dead in a single room and a suspect who fled before police arrived, there is often no one left to say what happened first, who moved where, or in what order. Investigators are left reconstructing the scene from physical evidence alone. A survivor changes that. She may be the only person alive who was inside that house while it happened, which makes her account, whenever and however she was able to give it, potentially one of the most important pieces of the entire file. But it also places a weight on a child that no child should carry. Whatever she remembers, she remembers from the worst minutes of her life. Investigators know that. It's part of why cases like this move carefully and quietly around a witness this young. Because here's what her survival did and didn't do. What it did was extraordinary. It saved her own life and it triggered the response. What it did not do was answer the question underneath the entire case. And that question is why. Let me widen the frame for a moment. Because her call didn't end the danger. It started a manhunt. Police say the shooter didn't stop at that first home. He is believed to have gone to a second house elsewhere in Missaukee County, where a fifth victim, a 53-year-old man, was found dead. Police never disclosed that home's exact location. Then, after a large-scale search across rural county roads and wooded terrain, investigators found the suspect's vehicle near Whitlock Lake, and near it, 2 more bodies. One was the man they had been hunting, 39-year-old Chad Hickman. The other was a 29-year-old woman. Police have released her age and her gender. They have never released who she was to him. So even as the search that began with a girl's phone call came to an end, it ended on another unanswered question. And consider what her call did in practical terms, beyond saving herself. A 911 call creates a fixed point in time, a moment investigators can build a timeline around. It's logged, it's recorded, it's stamped with an exact time. In a case spread across 3 locations and miles of rural county, where much of the sequence had to be pieced together after the fact. That timestamp near 11:40 in the morning is one of the few hard anchors in the whole record. It marks when the outside world first learned. It shaped when troopers were dispatched and where. It's the reason the response to the first scene happened when it did, rather than hours later, after someone eventually noticed something was wrong. A rampage across that much ground could have gone undiscovered far longer. It didn't, because a wounded 13-year-old picked up a phone, and the man at the center of it had a history. I want to stay strictly on the record here. Court records reviewed by the Detroit News and reported by the Associated Press show that in 2024, Hickman pleaded guilty to misdemeanor 4th-degree child abuse and to contributing to the delinquency of a minor, in a case connected to an incident dating back to 2010. He was sentenced to 1 year in jail, and in that same case, more serious charges, felony assault, and criminal sexual conduct, were dismissed. Records also show a contentious divorce finalized in 2025. The judge wrote that it was uncontested. The marriage had involved allegations of domestic violence on both sides, calling them central to the case. Neighbors, for their part, described a man they weren't shocked by. One former tenant said he should have been in jail way longer, and that none of us are surprised. I lay that out for one reason, to show you the size of what this child survived. This was not a random flash of violence from a stranger with no history. Whatever the motive turns out to be, and police say they are still working to determine one, the person she survived was someone the record had already flagged, more than once, years before that Friday. And that record is why this case didn't stay contained to one county's grief. In the days after the shooting, Michigan's so-called red flag law, the mechanism that's supposed to let a court temporarily remove firearms from someone deemed a serious danger, was already being pointed to in public debate. The question people started asking was uncomfortable and direct. If a man's history was this documented, a child abuse conviction, dismissed felony charges, a divorce steeped in domestic violence allegations, neighbors who say they saw it coming, why wasn't any of it enough to reach him before August 14th? I'm not going to tell you how to feel about that, but it reframes the survivor's story in a hard way. The 13-year-old didn't just survive a shooting, she survived a man the record had been warning about for years. And the debate her case has fueled isn't really about what nobody knew. It's about what was known, written down, and on file, and still didn't stop what happened in that house. So where does that leave her, and where does that leave the case? As of now, she has survived. Reported critical at first, then stable. Alive because of what she managed to do in the worst minutes of her life. Around her, a community has responded. Vigils, a church that became a gathering place for grief and counseling, fundraisers for the families, and a school district that said it plans to honor a student who was killed. The governor was briefed and offered condolences. In a place this small, a rural county where, as one local pastor put it, families had known each other for generations, the loss didn't land on strangers. It landed on neighbors, classmates, and a congregation that suddenly found itself planning both vigils and funerals in the same week. And at the center of all of it is a child now facing a recovery that is physical, but won't only be physical. But her survival, remarkable as it is, sits inside a case that is still full of holes. The 45-year-old man in the first house, unexplained. The woman in the woods, unexplained. The motive, undetermined. And there's a hard reality underneath all of it. Chad Hickman is dead, which means there will be no trial. No prosecution laying out why in front of a jury, no testimony under oath, no verdict. Whatever police choose to release is what the public will get. Some of these questions may simply never be answered, not because the answers don't exist, but because the one person who could be made to answer for them is gone. The girl who called 911 lived, but the case she survived into may never fully close. If you want to follow what happens next, as police confirm the connections they've stayed silent about, and as this community works to support the child at the center of it, please subscribe to this channel so you're here when the record fills in. One last thing, and I want to be clear about it. Much of what surrounds this case remains allegation rather than conclusion. The court records are real, but the neighbors' accounts are their own. The family's identifications came before police confirmation, and no motive has been established by anyone. 5 people are gone who can't speak for themselves, and a child is still recovering from what she lived through. What we owe all of them isn't a dramatic story, it's an honest one, including the parts that are still blank. When the investigators fill those blanks in, we'll come back. Until then, the one thing this case got right, the one thing that isn't in doubt, is this. A 13-year-old girl, shot 4 times, saved her own life. Everything else is still open.